Hello everyone, welcome to the Guideline solution for assignment 8. So we're actually going to be moving away for a little bit from Excel, and we're going to be talking about this new idea, which is databases, even though we'll be back with Excel pretty soon. So let's start off with today. Of course, make sure you read all these instructions. So during the lab, a lot of you didn't really know how to start. Well, as usual, you just have to read the instructions. And we're supposed to do a table, and some of you try to do all the tables right away. Also, that's not what we want. Like if we read the first couple of lines, the database presented contains some information. The tables that make up the database are, and they name these 5 tables, and then they start talking about them. But if we keep reading, the first 4 tables are created for you. Some of you already were right away trying to do the customer table that had these columns, these fields, even though it was already created for you. So you only need to create the 5th table, which is vehicle. Then they tell you what the fields are supposed to be. And even here, some of you made mistakes, so be very careful how you're creating it, because really with these things, if you make a mistake, you're probably gonna have to delete the whole thing, then do it all over. So how can we create this table? Well, we have the create tab, and then there's tables. So under tables, we're gonna be choosing table design. And in table design is where we want to fill those fields that we just saw. So there's the field name and the data type. So what's the first field name? We have 3 of them: inventory ID, model, and VIN. So let's start with the inventory ID. And some of you try to do this where you put a space between the 2 things. We don't want that. We want it to be a single word. Now, even though you could have multiple words, that might not be an issue, but you will see why it might cause some problems in a second. So inventory ID, we want it to be an auto number. We'll click the arrow and choose auto number. Auto number just means every time you insert a record into here, automatically it'll put a number for you. Like if you put the first record, it might be 0 or 1. If you put the second, it'll be 2, 3, 4. Every time you add a new record to this table, automatically there's a number that's being added. This is pretty useful if you need an ID, right? Because every record is going to have a unique number. So we might just go ahead and right-click this box and press on primary key. So this field will be the primary key. It'll be what makes our table unique. Then we have the model as a short text with 50 characters. So name it model, short text. And to get that 30 or 50 characters, at the bottom in the general, you'll see there's something called field size. It's 55 by default. I'll just change it to 50. Then we have the VIN, also short text, and this one's gonna be 30. And that's it. I just really now have to save this table, so I can choose to close it. It's going to ask me, are you sure you want to save the design as of this table? I'll say yes. Then they'll tell me what I want to name it. I will just name it vehicle as they wanted, and make sure it's spelled right. Okay. Now when I press OK, I get the vehicle. Now we didn't really check all the other tables, but if you double click this one and this one and this one, you'll just get all the different tables that were already created for you. And when you see these hashtags, it just means, like in Excel, you need a bit more space to see it. So you can either double click or click and move the column to make it bigger. But these are just tables that already have been created for you. The one that we just created, which is vehicle, if I double click it, you'll notice it's empty. It has the fields that we created, but it's currently empty. So let's go ahead and fill it. Now there's 2 ways or multiple ways we could fill this. Either I could type in these 1 by 1. So 1, high standard, etc., and fill them myself, but it's going to be pretty tedious, especially if every time I'm going to have to write this really just random letters. Instead, what we could do is fill it externally. So with the Access database that we gave you, there's also this Excel file. It has what you need. And even here, there's multiple ways I could insert it, and we're going to follow the instructions. So again, a lot of you got lost here. Really, just if you're in the habit of rushing things, just take a moment to read what we want. Click the external data tab. Okay, so I'll click external data. Next step is saying choose new data source, then Excel. And at this moment, lots of you, oh, you just saw Excel, so you decided to click it right away. Even though, if you read, this is in the export option. Export means it's like you're saving to the outside. The information that you have in your database, you're putting it outside. That's not what we want. We don't want to output it. We want the opposite. We want to input it, or we want to import it, right? And it's right here, new data source. They said we want the Excel button. That's inside new data source. So I have to choose new data source from file, and this is what I want from Excel. I want to import from an Excel file. So I press OK. Then you just have to first choose the location. This is again from the instructions. You need to do two things. For the source, you have to select vehicle data. So wherever you saved that file, that Excel file, you're going to have to browse for it. So you can browse and go ahead and look for it, or you could just, I have it here, I'll copy the path and paste it. Or let me do it from here, and then I can choose vehicle. So I have the path, I just need the last bit which actually has the file. So I'll press OK. And even here, a lot of you pressed OK right away to import it, even though we're not done. For the destination, select the option append copy to the vehicle table. So we have 3 more options. We want the append one, and then we want the vehicle, because that's a table that we just made, and we're appending. So whatever is in the Excel, we're appending it, or we're adding it to our table in the database. And you see, like, it's maybe 3 or 4 steps, but at every step, one of you tried to rush things and you did it improper, and then we had to do the whole thing all over again. In some cases, we'd had to redo the whole table as well. So I'll press OK. The table in which you're trying to append is currently open, so you'll see this a lot. You have to close everything before you're able to do modifications. So I'll close it, new data source from file, Excel. I'll choose the path again. Here we go. Append to vehicle. Press OK. Here it shows me what are the records I'm going to be choosing. These are just exactly as they are from the Excel. I'll say next, finish. It might ask me if I want to save those steps that I just did. It's not necessarily. You could save it if it was like a project, personal project, where you might be doing exporting from the same Excel file multiple times, but we're just not going to be doing it once. Now if I double click vehicle, I'll see everything's here, everything's okay. Now remember when I told you make sure you have inventory ID just one word? That's because in the Excel file we have it as one word, and in the instructions we told you it is one word. If you had made it inventory space ID when we had imported, it would not have worked, because here it has a field called inventory ID one word, and it would have tried to add it. It would not have been able to find it, because over there it was a single word. Here, if we had a space, it would have been 2 words, which is not the same thing. I know to us it might seem the same, but to a computer it's not. It has to be exactly the same in this case. So we can close and save the changes that we made for the table. Okay, that's it. And some mistakes that some of you did when you were creating the table is you didn't make inventory ID the primary key. Even they say it right here in the primary, it's the primary key. If you didn't do that, and every table needs to have a primary key. So if you didn't add that, it would have added a new field on its own called ID, for example, with its own probably auto number. And that would not have worked, because then again, when you're trying to import, here you have 3 fields. In this table, you'd have 4. Okay, so what did I just say here? If you did not choose inventory ID as the primary key, the table automatically would have created a new column that has some sort of unique ID. And that would have been a problem when we import it. So make sure when you follow the instructions of creating the table and importing it correctly. Okay, so all in all, this would take maybe 2 or 3 minutes to create the table and to import it once you get the hang of it. But with mistakes, it might take you half an hour redoing and doing. Anyway, create a relationship between the table vehicle and table sale item. So you have the vehicle that we just made and the sale item. We want to build a relationship. Now, if we open both tables, if we open this one, and was it sale? It would make sense that these two tables are related or not. Not, because I'm supposed to open sale item and not sale. Okay. So why would these two tables be related? Well, we have here something called inventory ID, and in this column we also have inventory ID. And sale ID, like imagine it's like a price ticket, right? Like once you pay, they give you a paper with what you bought. So sale ID, okay, the ID of the sale. Inventory ID is the ID of the item that you bought, and sale price for how much did you buy it. And we'll notice, okay, like one would be related to this row. So this sale ID is selling this specific item. Cool. However, if you notice, there is nothing in this column that doesn't exist in this column, which would make sense because this table has all your vehicles. It wouldn't make sense if you're trying to sell something that you don't have as a model of. Like I should not have here an 11. That wouldn't make sense if I'm trying to sell an item that has an inventory ID 11, but I don't have that in my inventory, right? So we're gonna go ahead. I don't want that record. Just put something random and delete it. Probably has to be a number. You must enter a value in the ID. Okay, this is actually kind of good. They're not making me do this because you cannot add or change. Okay, fair enough. We just press the escape key and we cancel that record. But what I cared about is what? I can't have an inventory ID here that's not here. Okay. However, I could have some inventory IDs here in vehicle that are not there. Like if you notice the item number, I think 5 was never sold. So in the sale item, maybe you never sold the item 5, but it does exist in your warehouse, let's say. All right, now let's actually build this relationship. So we'll go to Database Tools, Relationships, and you'll have this pop up with the relationships. All the 4 tables that are already given to you, the relationship is there. You just have to add the vehicle one. Okay, so the vehicle one is right here. The relationship we just saw, really, they're related because of the inventory ID. So I'll grab this one, drop it over this one. If I press create, I'll get a line, but it doesn't look like the screenshot with the 1 to infinity. So the problem with that is if I double click, I have to enforce referential integrity. And what's enforced referential integrity? It's essentially what I just said, where I can't have something that's here that I'm selling that's not really available to me. So we'll press enforce referential integrity, but that's going to cause problems. It's going to tell me your table's already open. So we'll go ahead and close the rest of the tables before we could do that. Now, I know it's a bit annoying with the layout of this, but we'll fix that in a second. So enforce referential integrity, great, the relationship is now there. Now, as I was saying, you might have multiple tables open, so it's kind of annoying to go through them. What you could do is you can go to File, Options, Current Database, Document Display. Instead of overlapping windows, we can change it to tabbed documents. So I press OK. It's going to tell me you're going to have to close and reopen the database for it to take effect. So I'll close it, open it again. And now when I open the items or the tables, they appear in this tabular format, which I think is much more neat, rather than have them overlaid. But that's just a personal opinion. You can do whatever you want. But I find this easier to be able to see what I currently have open. You'll notice also in the query, this will help us a lot. Anyway, the last thing we did was, if we go to the relationships, we currently have relationship. Now, the 1 to infinity means, what it usually means is, for every sale item, like read it from here, for every sale item, I can only have one vehicle. So for every sale you want to make, you can only sell one vehicle. However, for every vehicle, you could have many sale items. Like a vehicle, if it's a model, let's say, a vehicle could be sold multiple times. Now, this relationship could be one-to-one if we assume the inventory ID will only happen once, but for now, this is okay. Okay, now we get to the actually cool part, the interesting part, which is queries. We don't need the Excel anymore, so we can just close this. Write the needed SQL queries to do the following. Name them as Q1, Q2, Q3. Make sure you do this, the naming. So list the last name, first name, nickname, and hire date of all salesperson. Now you could actually solve this without even looking at the tables. As long as you can see the relationship, that's all you need. So we want the last name, first name, and from salesperson. So they already told us the table we want to query is salesperson, and I need these 4 things. So we'll go ahead. Also in the create, but instead of table this time we want queries. So query design, this we don't want to use this type of query design. If something pops up like a window, you can, like a small window, you can just close that. We want to see the SQL view because we want to write it as an SQL query. An SQL query is made up of lots of things like select, from, where, and you probably took a few more things. But for now, for this first one, all we need is select and from. Select are the fields that you care about, which in this case are last name, first name, nickname, and hire date. So we'll list them as they are. Last name, first name, nickname. And some of you did this, and hire date. Don't write it and hire date. The fields that you select have to be comma separated. This and was here as in English. Like they're telling you, I want these 3 fields and this 4th one. You don't copy paste everything. We'll put a comma. These are the full 4 fields that I need. You don't have to have them as the same, like the case sensitivity doesn't matter here, but the spelling does. So like if I say hire date as 2 words, that's a problem. It has to be a single word because I have it here as a single word. Usually you'd have your fields as single words. From which table are these things? Well, from salesperson. Again, it doesn't matter if I have this capitalized or not, but do make sure you spell it correctly. Now in the query design, as where I am, if I press the run button, it's going to execute the SQL code that I just did, and it's running it, and it's bringing me this mini table, temporary table. And if I compare them, it looks okay. Jones, Sandler, Smith, etc. If I want to go back and see my SQL, I can just press in the view, go to SQL, or over here. This is running it, SQL. So there's lots of ways you can go backwards and forwards. But once you make sure it's correct, you can just close it and save it as Q1. And again, this is where the tabular form comes in handy. Also, a lot of you, once you make a query, if you did a mistake and say you didn't get it correctly, you don't have to go ahead and create a new query, because then you'd have multiple queries that are not finished. You can just, as I did here, so let's say I ran it and it didn't work, I can just right click and go back to the SQL view. And then I can fix it rather than make a whole new query. Even if you wrote it wrong. So one mistake some of you might have done was this. So say select hire date. Say we wrote it as 2 words, from salesperson. If I run this, so if we press run, syntax is wrong. They're telling us there's a missing operator. So it's understanding hire and date as 2 different fields, and they're telling you should have them comma separated. And if you press run now, it's going to tell you what's hire. I don't have a field called hire. Whenever you try to run and you get this pop-up where it's asking you for the value of something, it probably means you wrote something that's not there. Like if I wrote hire data. So say I misread higher date as higher data, or I wrote it wrong. If I run it, it's going to tell me what's higher data. Whenever this pops up, just double check that what you wrote was not misspelled in any way. Okay, let's do now the other query. So again, I go to create, query design, SQL view. It's called query 1, that's okay. Now we want to list all the information about the customers who were serviced by Billy. About the customers. So if I just check the customer, this is probably the table that has all the information of my customers who were serviced by Billy. Now, for the salespersons, they do have names, first name, last name, but they also have a nickname. So when they say Billy, that's probably a nickname. And you'll notice you have a field called nickname here. So essentially you want all the information of your customers. Now could I go ahead and say, oh, I want customer ID, last name, first name, etc., and take a really long time, or I could just say select star. Now in Excel, star usually meant any sequence of characters. It might mean that as well here, but for now, when you say select star, that means all the fields. So I want all the fields from customer. But now we'll introduce this new where I want my nickname to be Billy. So I'm telling I want all the information from the table customer. So select again is your fields. It just happens you want everything. From is which table do you want it from, and where is your conditions. So now this is a new field where I have a conditions because we only want people that are serviced by Billy. So if I press run, we'll get 3 records, 3, 7, and 11 are the IDs, 3, 7, and 11, and all the information is listed. So it looks good. Now, a couple of notes. Make sure you write Billy between quotations because this is a specific string, a specific sequence of characters, Billy. You want Billy. If I didn't put the quotations, I try to run, it's going to ask me what is Billy, because now Billy is being treated as a variable or like as a header. Like, what is Billy? I don't have a variable Billy, I have the text Billy. So we press run, again, this is it. And again, one other note, you could technically write this all on one line. Like select from customer where Billy. I could write it all in one line and press run, it still works. But the order is important, like I should say select, then from, then where. The order is important. Like if I flip it, I'm not sure if it might work. Say select star where and then from. Doesn't really work. It's gonna tell you a syntax error, which means like you wrote it wrong. So I'll move where back at the bottom. Now, even though I could write it all in one line, this is better just so like, oh, each line has a specific purpose. Here you have your fields, you have your table, here you have your conditions. So just more organized that way. We're done. I can right click save, or I can close. It'll ask me if I want to save. I'll save it as Q2. Again, the cool thing with the tabular format, like now I can have like all the tables open, all my queries open. It's a lot more neat to go through them rather than the old format. This is how it used to be with the older versions of Access, but in the new ones, we have this window that you saw me at the beginning where they were all overlapping. Again, just so you remember, you can go to File, Options, Current Database. Before it's overlapping, you can choose it to be tabbed. Q3, list all the information about the sales items with sale price between 30,000 and 50,000. Okay, let's go ahead, create a query. We want the SQL, and usually when you press it, it'll gonna get this semicolon at the beginning. You can just remove that. Semicolon just means like it's the end of your query, but so we'll remove it and start writing. I want all the information from sale items with sale price. So I have to check which table exactly has these values because there's multiple sale tables. Because we have sale person, sale, and sale item. It's probably the sale item. ID, inventory ID, and sale price. Yes, that's what we want. So from the sale item table. Now some of you wrote sale which might have caused problems. Do we have a sale table? We do, but it doesn't have the records that we want. So it's sale item. You'll notice how it might go wrong when we say sale on. You'll see that in a second. So I'll have a condition where. So first let's solve it correctly, then we'll see the problems. Where the sale price is between 30 and 50,000. Again, some of you wrote where sale price. Why? They're talking in English, sale price, but it's actually just one word, right? Sale price. So where sale price is between 30,000 and 50,000. This is one of the few scenarios where you could actually just copy it and say between 30,000, but of course without the comma for 30,000, because the comma, it's used to separate things. So we write 30,000 and 50,000. So Excel will actually understand, Access, which is a type of database, will actually understand this. Oh, you want the sale price to be between this and this. And usually between will include the boundaries, which are 30,000 and 50,000. If we run it, we get two records, inventory ID 8 and 6, which is like the snapshot of the solution. So it looks good. However, what are some of the mistakes that we might have done? Well, again, if you had this as where sale price, we run it, syntax error. So this has to be one word. You might have chosen the wrong table. You might have just had sale. What would happen if I run here? It's going to ask me what sale price is. Now, this is kind of weird, right? Sale price does exist, but it exists in the sale item table. It exists in this table. When you say from sale, you're working in this table, so you can only see these fields. So when you tell me sale price, it doesn't exist in this table. So yeah, when you run it, it's going to tell you what is sale price. I don't know what that is. So again, so not always when it asks you for a parameter, it might mean you wrote it wrong. It might mean the table's wrong because you're looking for something that does exist, but it doesn't exist where you're looking at. So we'll change it back to sale item. Running it works. Anything else we could have done wrong here? I guess that's fine. Now we could have solved this differently. I could have said where sale price is bigger than, say, bigger than or equal, because we want it to be included, 30,000, and less than or equal 50,000. But this doesn't work here. It doesn't work like the between. When you say and, it means you have multiple conditions. So you have to say sale price is bigger than 30,000 and sale price is less than 50,000. Because maybe something else you want it to be less than 50,000. Maybe like profit is less than 50,000 if you had another variable called profit. That's why it's important here to write it between. Like this is one condition. And this is a completely other conditions, but together they give you this between effect that we had before. And if we run, still works okay. Okay, I think that's enough for this one. We'll just save as query 3 and we'll close it. Again, when you double click them, they'll appear as their table format, but you can always go to view SQL to see what you wrote. Now, create one more, the last one for query 4. Okay, list the sale IDs, sale dates. Again, they put sale dates with a space between them, but it's actually, and they said an S here, I know that, but they're talking to you in English. They're trying to ask you something. And like here, sale IDs has an S. Always compare it with how the actual fields look like sale ID. Sale date is one word, no S, etc. So they want this information for all sales carried by either Rock or Tina. So we want either Rock or Tina, and we want the value to be bigger than 50,000. So we have lots of conditions, and they're telling you could use ors and ands. Okay, first thing, let's just select the proper information. So if I want to write this strong, I'll just mindlessly type what I see. So sale dates, total, and sales person's nickname. This is the wrong way of doing it because you're just copying, you're not analyzing. Sale ID does not have an S. Sale date is one word and does not have an S. This is how it should actually be. Remember that we said we don't put and here. When in the select, you're just outputting the fields. And I don't have anything called salesperson's nickname. They're telling you I want the nickname of salesperson, which is literally just the field nickname. So I can remove salespersons. So select all the stuff from which table? Well, let's go check. Where does this information belong to? Is it in salesperson? It's obviously not going to be in customer because we're working with with the actual sale IDs. I do have nickname here, but I don't have total, I don't have sale date, I don't have sale ID. Do I have it in sale? There's sale ID, there's sale date, total, and the nickname. So all my information is actually in the sale table. So I'll say from sale. All that's left is I write my conditions, where I'll just write them first as they are. So they're saying I want the nickname to be rock. So we write rock between quotations. Let's first write it exactly as they tell us. Oh, so they're saying carried by rock or Tina. So I say or nickname. Again, I have to write it again, and I say Tina. If I didn't say here or nickname, if I didn't do this, if I just say equals rock or Tina, that's wrong. It's not gonna get this part. Like, actually, I'll leave it as this. And let's say I run this. I'm getting Billy, Tina, Star. I'm getting a lot of nicknames, where I should be only getting Tina and rock. That's because of this. Now let's say I get back the nickname. So nickname is Tina, and I run this. Okay, now I only get Tina and rock. Now it's not complete because I still have a condition, but I'm just trying to show you it's important to say the or nickname again. But why when I did this? Why when I did this, I got everybody else? Why not just rock, for example? That's because probably when you say or, you're saying either this condition should be true or this condition should be true. But this condition is just the text. Remember in Excel when I told you like really any number is true except for 0? That's kind of what you wrote here. When you write for me Tina, it's like saying, okay, condition 1 or condition 2, which is true. So that's why pretty much everybody appears. Let's see what happens if I write 0. Does 0 also mean false here? It does. So now only rock shows up because I'm saying either this first condition or the other condition, which is just 0, which is just false. If I write some number, that number is probably going to be true. What happens if I literally write true? Is that something that's known here? It might be known or it might be just text. So let's try false as well. Aha, so false doesn't. So false is false. That means true was true. So this false, when you write Tina, it's as if you had just written true. Okay, now instead if you wrote nickname equals Tina, okay, now that's actually a condition. You're checking either nickname is rock or it's Tina. Run it, it works. But now for the total, you'll notice 55, 66, 22, and 22. We want to get rid of these two. We only want it to be bigger than 50,000. Okay, so I'll say at the end, and total, we want it to be bigger than 50,000. Again, I won't write the comma because if I write the comma and I run, it's going to tell me there's a syntax error with this comma because it's used for separation. So I'll just write 50,000 as it is. If I run it, okay, great. It's better because before we had 4 records and one of them was 22,000. Now we have 3 records, but still one of them is 22,000. Why? It seems like the condition bigger than 50,000 was only applied for Tina. It wasn't applied for rock either. Again, I'll just show you before I added the condition. Tina and rock had 22, 22, but when I added the condition, only Tina's 22 was gone, rock stayed. So it seems it wasn't applied for rock. Why? And is stronger than or. That means and has priority to execute. So these two conditions are happening first, then together, like this, like Tina and 50,000 are happening together, or rock on its own. Does that make sense? and is stronger. So these two conditions are joined together as one big condition, or this other condition where you want rock to be Tina. One way of looking at it is like this. Imagine you have 2 plus 3, and you want to multiply both of them by 5. I want to multiply both of them as by 5, but if I leave it like this, multiplication is stronger than addition. So 5 will only be multiplied with 3, not with 2. And that's exactly what's happening here. Imagine the and is the multiplication, and the or is the addition. You're saying and these two conditions, so they happen together, or rock. So you're not really putting the total for both of them. You're putting it for one. How can you fix that? The exact way you can fix this issue. So you can either say, okay, I'll multiply 2 by 5, and then I'll add 3 by, multiply that by 5. So I could do that, which means you see this and we'll add it here. Does it make sense? So it's rock and bigger than 50,000, or Tina and bigger than 50,000. So you're multiplying the 5 by both of them, or another fix could have been. So first, let's see if this fix works. It does. Now it's only, before we had rock with 22, now it's gone. And what we did was we also added the 50,000 to rock. So that's one fix. Or you could have added brackets and said 2 plus 3 times 5. That also works, and I actually prefer that one because it's like, it feels like we're writing less. We're saying, and brackets have even higher priority, or these are parentheses, they have even higher priority than the and. So now you're saying nickname either rock or Tina. So these two happen together first, and I want it to be greater than 50,000. So it's like you're adding both numbers together, then you're multiplying by 5. And if we run this, it also works fine. So we'll save this as query 4. We'll have one last look at it. Looks fine to me. And we can close it. And yeah, essentially this is it for the databases. Again, a lot of you, I felt you struggled this week, not because maybe the material was hard, but just because of a lack of either paying attention to the details of the instructions, like when we first created the table, or when we filled the table, and even with the queries, not enough analyzing with the spacing, the S's, the plural, etc. So just be careful when you're reading, and of course make sure you revise your lectures, the main lectures, all your notes, etc. Because next time it's just gonna be, we're gonna be doing like, I don't know, like a bit harder queries, right? Like the level will be going forward. Okay, see you in the next one. Goodbye.